get into process, and things go terribly wrong when they don't. So if you know, most of my colleagues were very happy to help in the right context. But if we say, oh, really, you should be logging a call for that, it's because we've seen it go wrong where either we or someone else have tried to be really helpful, and we've gone home at 5:30 or 6 o'clock or whatever, and it's just not worked. Sure.
Have you ever thought about writing a book to capture all this knowledge?
The thing is, and Stacey and Brett are the same. Is what I know is pervasive within Oracle. There are lots of people. Clive here, who works for Symantec, knows this stuff. I remember Clive saying, we worked together at Cray, and one of the things he said is, the more senior you get, the more time you spend checking basic things. So I don't feel I know any more than anyone else. So I don't
simply years of experience.
Yeah, doing stuff, isn't it? And I think it's seeing other people. I'm fortunate enough to be walking into other people's disasters for a couple of days, and then you walk out again. And I guess
I'd have to add that you should spend as much time looking for what's missing as well as looking for what's there that shouldn't be. But very often it's stuff that you assume is there and it just isn't. And like you gave in one of your examples about things that should be there but are missing for some reasons.
And what I'm, the way I'm thinking, what I'm trying to do now is think about how do we engineer products so that you don't have to worry about this stuff. And that's really where I think we shouldn't be, computing wide, is you shouldn't have to know this stuff. We should engineer it out. And if it's a small example like MDB, try and engineer that out. That's kind of where I'm trying to spend my time.
Is Acceptor system being phased out, or is it always going to be there for those very low things?
I don't talk about product futures, religion, politics. I'm unaware of anything that's going to phase it out. I don't believe.
I mean, it should always be empty. It's just there.
Well, it's not always necessarily empty, but it's what should be in there. And one of the things I've always done is gone and looked at it first. After what kernel patch are we running and what architecture is it? Right, what's in Acceptor system? Now there can be, you may want to mod load drivers, there may be particular things in there, but there's often a lot of historical crud in there. And I think my message is when you will go to, if you haven't already gone to Solaris 11, have a quick check. Don't pull stuff over just because it was there. And don't let your friends do it either. Does that answer your question?
So I'd certainly add that when I handle equipment that I've not seen before for people, that one of the first things I have to do, if I have any suspicions, is to look for the latest firmware for its parts. And it's amazing what that can solve.
Firmware is an interesting one. Because I think there's the number of times you come across down-rev firmware and a reluctance to upgrade firmware, and it goes back to a bad experience on a VAX in the 1970s running whatever VMS.
I mean, I've done so many that it doesn't worry me anymore. There are all these different methods of loading it, but frankly, it's not very often I have to do it.
Yeah. I think it is certainly easier to upgrade.
Take precautions, but I carry on.
And I think also, because we've got very few ways of observing firmware and how it's behaving, it's a bit of that mysterious stuff we don't want to touch. And maybe there's a kind of a message for us. So, and then there was one more.
Yeah, there was a technical question I wanted to ask about one of the slides. When you first mentioned the PAPI framework stuff, and there was the HTTPD process there. I'm just kind of sparked my interest because I work for a large website. I was just wondering what information I would get from that?
So from that particular one,
recompiled.
you know, if you've got a real genuine use for this,
Yeah.
I'll come and see you at some point. I'm that interested in finding a you know, the university I went to work with, he goes, oh, I've got something to do with this. He says, one day there will be a crisis where I'll need to have some experience on this. But so what you would get from this is that for the level 2 data cache miss, for user and kernel, and what we do is we sample, because there are so many events, we can't pick up everyone. You pick up them all, the machine will just melt. So we only look at we'll sample them all, but we'll say for this predicate, we only want to look at HTTPD. And so for this, the argument is an address of the instruction that's being executed, and ufunc will tell us what that function is. So what we would get is a sorted list of, from the lowest to the highest, is what function was being executed when we had data cache misses.
So that's a function within the HTTPD.
It's HTTPD, yeah, we're looking into HTTPD. And similarly, if you wanted to look at kernel, or Oracle, or SAS, or SAP, or your home-spun application, it would show you the function in that.
Is that actually programming the counters on the CPU though? As
Yes.
the old one did?
And there is no overhead in programming those counters. There's a hardware program counters which you're sampling every so often.
But there's a fixed number of counters, so is this dealing with all that? You know,
Right, you can only look at, for some processes I think it's 2, for some it might be 8, or 8. But there are only a limited number that you can look at any one time. So you can't program all counters and go, let's see what's interesting. You've got to have a bit of an idea. And that's the black magic of going from sort of MP stat and PR stat to which counter do we want to go and look at. Does that answer your question? Does that answer yours?
One thing you haven't mentioned, I don't know whether it's just because I used to do a lot of night shifts. You haven't mentioned backups, which I always found was the key is your backup is running, you're trashing, you're handling your disk, you're using lots of memory, you're trashing your various file system caches, and that's why, and it will be better in the morning.
Yeah, I did mention backups, but in a different context. That is incredibly common, that the new version of that is user migration, so moving from one storage cell, because backups now often don't happen on the host itself, they'll happen on the storage, or there'll be clones, or we're doing ZFS snapshots. But the new one that seems to be hidden from view is migrating users between lumps of storage. Yeah. It's one of those oddities that you come across.
Leave it there?
I think so, yeah.
Actually, thanks, Clive, for that. Let's get the